Hey, welcome to the Common Sense Defense Podcast. My name is Ptolemy Pruden, the host, and I'm excited to share with you a lot of information about what's going on in the Indo-Pacific and how it relates to the United States directly. I have a goal for the next four sessions to go through the details of the framework and architecture that needs to be enacted to collaborate with our friends and allies. And so I hope that this will really help you to get an understanding of what we're trying to accomplish and the building blocks that need to be in place to do that. So I'm going to use as a backdrop the book that I wrote called China Rising: The Case for Containment. You can get this at the Common Sense Defense Podcast website, and this book will allow you to kind of go through some of the nuts and bolts of the things that we're discussing today. Took me 6 years to write, so a little bit over 5 years of work. And I'm really excited to share some of that. But in reality, that book juxtaposed to our current international geopolitical situation is totally apropos and totally timely. So let's look at the Indo-Pacific and how we can collaborate with our friends and allies. I think it'd be appropriate for me to share some of the material in the book as we talk through this. And so for me, I'm going to be using the material from the book as a foundation. So let's look at a couple of pages here, and that will kind of go through the nuts and bolts for the book. So I'm going to take a paragraph from the preface of the book. It's called "The purpose of this book is to start a solutions-based conversation about actions the United States can take along with its friends and allies to address China's rapid militarization and annexation of the South China Sea, while inspiring the next generation of thought leaders to pursue such fields as science, technology, law, policy, and history." And then on the second page, I want to read this couple paragraphs here. It says, "Most of this book focuses on military options, including weapons systems, as well as modifications to defense policies and practices. These options will give our forces a fighting chance and advantage in the first hours of conflict with China. I write about the need for an extended role for our AI-backed unmanned platforms, as well as expanding the capacity for the Navy to be more robust, viable, and lethal. Combined, these strategies will blunt multi-domain attacks coming from the ocean floor to space. This book should be read with a sense of urgency as a roadmap to the necessary actions that can be taken in conflict um, if conflict was to arise within this decade and deterrence was the only option to prevent it. China Rising: The Case for Containment should be read as an answer to the question, what can I do to help my country? While there is no smoking gun or blame placed in this book, there is a call to reach a little deeper, to work together domestically and globally with our strategic partners to alleviate to alleviate the incredible cost of a new Cold War, finding out what works, who does it best, and where can we negate risk. That infiltrates the book to ensure we are better together. China Rising: The Case for Containment is a visionary document that asks the reader to stretch their imagination in pursuit of solutions to help those who love freedom here and around the world. So that's kind of the essence of what the book is. And so what I want to do is parallel that with where we are and how other thought leaders and policymakers are kind of looking at that now, in our government and governments around the world, whether it's Australia, Japan, the Philippines, India, the UK. So we have a lot of friends and allies globally that are in that same situation. How do we deal with the China expansion policy, China's militarism? And so that, I think the exciting part about having written a book that's over 400 pages is that now things are starting to roll out just that way, that have written about options that we can take. And so now I'm looking at real world operations compared to theorizing and concepts of what we need to do and paralleling those and showing you that, hey, being ahead of the game is a good thing from a policy perspective. So that's what I want to talk about, is the framework, the architecture that needs to be in place so that we can work together. And so there's different types of framework. There's different types of ways to look at uh, how to fix the problem. And so that's kind of really what I'm going to delve into. So I'm going to use a lot of real world stuff that helps. So let's look at the first thing I want to look at is I want to look at the United States Japan Joint Leaders Summit, which was the leader's statement, which was last week, April the 10th. And I want to give you a quote from that. That let's look at that really quick. This is put out by the White House from last week, before the summit. It says the United States welcomes the steps Japan has taken to fundamentally enhance its defense capabilities, including its plans to increase the budget for its defense capabilities and complementary initiatives to 2% of GDP in Japanese fiscal year 2027. In accordance with Japan's national security strategy, its decision to possess counter-strike capabilities and its plans to stand up the Japan Self-Defense Forces, the JSDF, Joint Operations Command, to enhance command and control of the JSDF. Together, these initiatives elevate our defense ties to unprecedented levels and launch a new era of U.S.-Japan security cooperation, strengthening our alliance and contributing to stability in the Indo-Pacific. It goes on to say, today we announced several new strategic initiatives to further advance our alliance. Recognizing the speed at which regional security challenges evolve and to ensure our bilateral alliance structures meet these critical changes, we announced our intention to bilaterally upgrade our respective command and control frameworks to enable seamless integration of operations and capabilities and allow for greater interoperability and planning between U.S. and Japanese forces in peacetime and during contingencies. The last part that I want to read is the last section of this part. It says, in support of this vision, we also affirm our goal to deepen intelligence, surveillance, and reconnaissance cooperation and alliance information sharing capabilities, including through the Bilateral Information Analysis Cell. And I want to parallel this information that we just finished reading there with chapter 12 of the chapter 12 in the book that I wrote, and that's going to be very interesting to see the importance of this. I want to read this to you here. The section of chapter 12 is Army AUKUS and Treaty Partner Defense Integration. And remember, this is from 4 or 5 years ago. Commonality in defense is critical for survival, and for too long, our collective defense policies have focused on like-to-like norms and how we work together, and that mindset has diminished our collective strength. While we have defense treaties with dozens of countries, including all of NATO, we do not have collaborative cross-operational functionality from treaty partner to treaty partner. Nations such as Korea to Japan or Australia to the Philippines do not collaborate in this way. While this capability exists extensively among NATO nations, it does not work between our Indo-Pacific regional treaty partners. This lack of cohesiveness, it hinders our nation from operating with a regional defense construct, such should there be an attack on U.S. assets or those of one of the defending treaty nations. The glaring problem is, when we consider battle, should Korea be dragged to a battle where the U.S. is aiding the Philippines? Or should Australia be dragged into a battle where Japan is in conflict with China? The answer is no. If the U.S. is obligated to defend our treaty partner, it does not obligate another treaty nation to do the same. Last section I want to share with you. Commonality of command, ISR, intelligence, surveillance, reconnaissance, and strike data is the key asset proposed here. Possessing the ability to have situational awareness of the region and be able to parcel out strike packages by participating treaty partners is the key component. Activating a treaty nation's Article of Mutual Defense is the only requirement for defensive and offensive actions. Sharing intelligence, information, and even weapon systems does not obligate a nation to having its forces brought into the conflict. The collaborative environment of ISR and command and control platforms offer each treaty nation a multi-domain transparency of the entire Indo-Pacific region. And that's really what I really want to focus on. It says in each of these areas of operation, NATO and South Korea have a joint and transparent ISR, command and control environment. The same integration is needed in the Indo-Pacific, where treaty partners can share intelligence information as it relates to China and possibly even Russia. So the reality is you have to have common ISR integration, intelligence, surveillance, reconnaissance integration with your treaty partners if you're trying to propose a viable deterrent against a possible adversary, meaning uh, the ability to see a target, share that target information, and offboard or share that material with your friends and allies for anyone in the theater to send to send a weapon to destroy the target. That's what you need, and the foundational pieces have to be put in place so that you can have that capability to act if the need occurs. And so, um, treaty partner integration, which is what we talk about in that chapter, that's critical. This is not where the United States is out there going it alone. It's about where the United States is out there with our friends and allies going together to look at how we can be a joint deterrent to China, and also, as you can see, with Russia. So the framework is being prepared now. The framework is being put in place, and what we have to understand is that if we don't do those things now, then when we need to make sure that we have a viable deterrent, then that the options are not on the table. Now, the first part of the architecture is policy, and so what I want to talk about moving forward is that the policy construct or the architecture for friends like in Japan, and then the policy construct for our friends in the Philippines, and then the policy construct of how we all can work together and what does that look like. And so one is the architecture from a policy perspective, and then we're going to come in at the end and we're going to talk about the architecture from a physical perspective. What physical things have we done or are we doing so that how it all works together? So one is just the policy, how our laws, our rules, our modus operandi, all those things. Then we want to look at what does that look like in the real world. So that's kind of how we're going to go over the next 3 sessions with you. So I'll have different excerpts from the book China Rising, The Case for Containment, but then also I will use that material from a visionary perspective with the real world operations that what we're doing now. And my hope is that you can get a copy of the book and walk along with me. So what's going to happen is the book China Rising, The Case for Containment will be something that all policymakers are going to be able to look at and say, okay, I understand what you're saying. I can see it from this perspective. I can see it because it's all about a conversation. And if we don't do something about working together and having a common strand or common theme of understanding, then we're not going to be able to work together effectively, and nor are we going to be able to stand up to China's militarism and possible conflict down the road. We won't be able to accomplish those goals constructively, collectively, if we don't start looking at it now. So my hope is you get a chance. Like our podcast, look at our material, and get a copy of the book if you want. And I tell you that the next few sessions are going to be a lot of fun, and we look forward to talking to you in a few